Colonel Festus Aboagye, thank you for joining us on the City Breakfast Show. I trust you are doing well.
Inshallah, we are fine.
It's good to have you. Is our democracy delivering hope for its people, especially the young? I'm sure you've been listening to the lecture and excerpts we've brought so far and the calls by Francis Poku. From where you stand, are we delivering?
Well, thanks for having me. I listened to bits and pieces of the lecture yesterday on radio from your channel, and then when I got home, a bit of it on TV, and then some excerpts this morning. Whether you're asking whether democracy is delivering or not, the answer is an emphatic no. Democracy is not delivering. And this erroneous misconception on the part of politicians and several people that democracy means every 4 years we go and queue and then we vote a government, some people into government, and that is democracy. That is not democracy. What are the reasons why we elect people into office? We elect them so that they will manage the affairs of the state, the economics, the social aspects, the political aspects, the security aspects, the governance aspects, all aspects, to improve upon the livelihoods or the well-being of the people. Now, what we've seen over the last 7 years, to use it as a time frame, is not democracy. The well-being of the individual has worsened. And the data is in the statistics, the statistical services data that this, learned friend comes to read out. We cannot manage the city. We cannot stabilize it. Since prices have gone through the roof, I don't go to the market, but let me take medications that I buy, not that I'm chronically ill. Some of the prices have gone up 3 times. And when I say 3 times, I'm talking about medication that is 200 cedis that now sells close to 700 Ghana cedis. You see, fuel prices have gone through the roof. I believe yesterday or so it's gone up again. And yes, salaries or incomes have not gone up. By the way, when we talk about salaries, I'm well informed that we are talking about the so-called Chapter 71 or Article 71, who are about less than 800,000 Ghanaians out of the 30-something million. Now, out of this number, we are talking about the top bracket. You see, the executive plus the legislature and so on and so forth, who go home with fat salaries and cooks allowances and transport allowances and this and that allowances, and yet have their vehicles fueled by the state on weekends to travel around Asante Achim and every part of the country attending funerals in their constituencies. Meanwhile, there are people that the state has employed who for several months are not paid. And there are those that the state has not even created the environment for them to get employment. In other words, we have voted for people to now milk us. And those were some of the points, Of course, I don't agree with not that I don't agree with everything that the speaker said, but the way and manner in which he articulated the views, it was touch and go, touch and go, touch and go, without depth, without scope. But that's the reality. That all the monies that we are borrowing, we still can't find the money in the lives of the individuals. And that is not democracy. Then we come to the topic of corruption, let's say. Now, how can you be in a democracy where you claim that you are based on the rule of law and a minister of state? Look, I'm an ordinary soldier. I joined before I went to university. I haven't gone to university. But I know enough during my professional education in the armed forces and elsewhere that all public laws or all laws in a democracy must be publicly promulgated. No minister has got the prerogative of going to buy medicines or medications for the country, and that has not gone to Parliament to be promulgated. And the minister is spending millions of cedis or dollars to buy us vaccines. And the minister comes, oh, I was confused. And nothing happens to him, not a scratch on his skin. And he remains in office until he retires or he resigns. Is that democracy? That's not democracy. You see what I mean? The sanctions don't apply.
I get you.
The checks and balances don't apply.
Is it the democracy that is failing, or is the political class that is failing us?
Democracy as an institution, as a concept, as a practice, has to be applied. Now, the education is where we are going wrong, because if it was possible for the 30-something million people to apply the principles of democracy, we would have done it, like the olden days of the Greeks. But because we can't do it in this modern era, that is why we have bought into the concept of representation in a legislature, and then to have an executive, and then to have the judiciary. From the president down, you don't get this kind of authority being used to manage the affairs of the state. Well, I cannot go and sanction the minister. Where are the institutions and the individuals that must sanction the minister? Nobody. You take public safety, public law and order, and you have a minister, not even a minister, a parliamentary candidate using an unlicensed arm and fire it in public, and nothing happened to her. Meanwhile, we've got the institutions. We've got the CID, we've got the Yoko, we've got this, we've got that. Nobody touched that woman. And she became a minister. She's still a minister. That's not democracy. That's when I spoke to somebody about this lecture, I thought the theme was the democratic control of the armed forces. Now, what I heard yesterday was not about that theme. It was about a whole lot of things that had nothing to do with the democratic control of the armed forces. But if we have stuck by that theme, then you take Ejura and you take Ayawaso and you take Ashama, you take this, you take that. Then you ask yourself, where are the democratic structures, institutions, and individuals that must exercise how the armed forces applies the force, the coercive force or tools that it has? They have all been compromised, because I'll keep on saying that the people in authority are misusing the armed forces. The simple ones are the soldiers in uniform with arms, carrying the handbags of lawyers going to represent a political party. That's one example. Another example is a soldier following the Attorney General going to court. Is that how we went to the military academy and training schools to be trained to carry handbags? When the Queen of England carries her own handbag and carries her own umbrella, and it does not detract at all from her status as the Queen of England. But what about that MP who sits on UTV almost every morning? When we were electing the Speaker of the House, January 2017, was it 6-7, into the night, into early 7th January 2021, the Speaker in this country, per the architecture of power, is the third in the hierarchy of power. So when we're electing a Speaker, we are virtually electing a potential president of this country. Now, that member in the House who went and grabbed ballot papers, disturbed that, went away with his life. But at the same time, there were 8 or more who died. They died at the hands of people, bearing arms, who should not have used the arms in the way in which they were used. In fact, some of them should not even have been deployed at the place. And Kenya gives us very good examples. Granted that they have all their challenges. When was the last time you and I, any Ghanaian, saw or heard about a public gazette notice from the executive, the state, saying that ordinarily I must not use the armed forces in this country, but under the circumstances in Kenya, on this 25th day of June, I have directed that the armed forces must be deployed and read the words to support the police. To do what? To maintain law and order. When was the last time that a public gazette notice was issued? So there's no democracy. That's the point I'm trying to make. The democracy is not being practiced in the spirit and letter in which it must be applied.
So now,
you see what I mean? Yeah. And that is a danger, because slowly it's like those who walk when they are sleeping. Our eyes are open.
Hello, Kano.
Mr. Francis Poku came and drew our attention to. By the way, let me finish on this. In Kenya, one of the things that caused the fever, once again, was failure of intelligence. The business of national intelligence is to gauge the mood, and I'm using mood in a very liberal sense. How are the people faring? Are they eating? Can they access health delivery services? Can they, are they safe in their houses? The Kenyan intelligence failed to inform the executive about the mood of the youth, the so-called Gen Z. If they did, then the executive ignored them. So in this country, I'm asking, all the institutions that we've set up, especially the National Security Institution, which is now a ministry, what information are they gathering? Forget about intelligence. Go misuse the word. I posted it on Facebook this morning. It's simple information. You go to market, people say the price of banku has gone up, the price of this has gone up, tomato has gone up. That is information. It's not intelligence. You've not processed it. When you process it and you begin to extrapolate, the repercussions and the ramifications for this and that, that becomes intelligence. Or the likelihood that is going to lead into some upheaval, that becomes intelligence. But even if we provided the intelligence, where is the action? There's no action. So there's a lot that we need to do. That. In fact, for me, I'm going to write an article. The last 8 years and the entire 32 years of this democracy has been wasted opportunity for the entire country. Because when we moved away from military rule, everything that we said happened during revolutions and mutinies and coups that we didn't want. We should have made a deliberate, conscious effort to move away from them. We cannot be in a democracy, and yet police and soldiers can go around without any executive authority. To kill, to shoot, to kill, to land guard, to carry the handbags of people and this and that and that. That's not democracy.
Right. Very grim picture you're painting here. Now, we have several organs of the state, right? And part of the conversation we are having that is leading to people losing hope in the country is corruption. The fact that some people can engage in unbridled loot of the nation's resources that's meant for everyone's well-being and end up walking free. So I take you to some other African countries, for example. If you go to Reuters on November 27, 2019, it reports that Namibia arrests former justice minister in fishing scandal. And this is a former minister. At the time he was arrested, actually, he was a sitting minister. If you go to Rwanda also, and this is an online portal, crime reports. The former IGP in Rwanda, Emmanuel Gasana, was also arrested for some offenses. And as we speak, he's currently in jail. In fact, both gentlemen are in jail. You think that actions like this, where people who are in authority found culpable are actually made to face the law, give the youth some hope and the citizenry some hope in the system of democracy, that everyone is equal before the law? Now, when you compare these two stories that I've shared with you to what happens in Ghana and some examples that will come to mind, would you say that the judiciary is failing, the executive is failing, or the legislature that has oversight responsibility is letting us down?
Well, you've given one too many examples. Indeed, there are several more. In an article I'm writing about the South African elections, there are examples that I've come across of people who have gone to jail, including the woman who died, who was the former chief executive of South African Airways and so on. They're all before court. The former president, Jacob Zuma, went to court and went to jail. Former president, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Here, nobody goes to jail. Nobody has gone to jail, to the best of my knowledge. And those who have gone to jail because they have been, if you like, guinea picked, and used as an example, and that is the end of it. But let me use this narrative, assuming that the story is true. That Ameri deal, the 100 million that was slapped on top of the actual value of the deal, who were the entities that were involved? The one that got Boakye Ejakun to be sacked.
I think he resigned.
If there are anecdotes, assuming there are anecdotes, and the anecdotes are about the president of the state and the people around him, including family and friends, and nothing happens to the president, and nothing happens to those around him, then how do we check corruption? That's 100 million, if the figure is right. 2 million is mentioned with regards to, is it 2 million with the Fualugu Dam? The Sky Train, was it another 2 million? Then there's another 12 million mentioned in respect of stuff. I mean, these days, the amounts of monies being mentioned are huge. Years ago, we thought that these amounts could only be mentioned with regards to Kenya and with regards to Ghana. Now they are with regards to Nigeria, sorry. They are being mentioned with regards to us. So, the question is, as you asked, where is the CIA? Where is the OSP? Where is the YOK? Where is the financial, blah, 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 FIT Center, crime? We've created all the structure. So on the last celebration of the Corruption Perception Index, we went to the Teachers College. Then the so-called chief of staff from Jubilee House, Flagstaff House, came and read a statement about the achievements of this government. And the achievements were the institutions, the laws that the government has created. Now, laws alone do not make a democracy. If you pass the laws and you don't apply them, then you are as worse as having not passed the laws at all, because the laws are not respected. And the laws are not respected even by those who pass them and who have the first responsibility to apply them.
So, Keno, let me ask you a very direct question. I mean, are we really able to execute these examples we talk of? Because, for example, we say that all the organs of state are independent, there must be separation of powers, they must be checking each other. But here you have the executive appointing members of the judiciary, at least to the Supreme Courts. You have the executive also appointing members of the legislature as members of cabinet or ministers. So it appears all power is vested in the executive, and a lot is done at the home of the executive. So are we truly looking at having our institutions function in a way that will be independent, so that corruption, justice will be seen and felt to be done? Have we set up ourselves for these examples to happen here?
No, I think our leaders are hypocrites.
Hello, Keno. Hello, Keno.
Democrats.
Keno, sorry,
Yes.
I lost you a bit, so please take that again.
Yes. I say our leaders are hypocrites. They claim before they came to power that they are Democrats. So if you are a Democrat and you have now the reins of power in your hands, and you see that to be truly democratic, we need to review and amend or reform or whatever of this constitution. Why don't you take the steps to do that? So you have one government that comes and sets up a constitutional review committee, several hundred pages long. We don't do anything about that. Another government comes, doesn't do anything. And then another government comes at the tail end, what we call the exit terminal stages. It sets up another, process or sets in motion another process to review the constitution. The idea is that our leaders are not serious about changing the constitution or reviewing the constitution in order to remove all the loopholes and make our democracy to work better. That's a clear example. You see, the other example is, even if the constitution has loopholes, we all have consciences, don't we? We all have consciences. And sometimes we know that something that we're about to do can have very serious repercussions, especially if you're a leader ruling over 32 million thereabout people. So there are certain practices that you don't do. And indeed, if you castigated your predecessor on questions of family and friends and chronism and whatever it is, then when you come to power, you try to steer away from that. In other words, if we have tried incrementally to outdo one another in good practices, not bad practices. Now, the equalization is a competition about mediocrity. It's a competition about non-performance. It's a competition about wrongdoing. That is what our political parties are engaged in. They are not engaged in a scenario where one government came and did X, Y, Z, another government came and did A, B, C, and incrementally you could see the strategic effect. One argument I've been making elsewhere is that, so with all the so-called 1 trillion economy, where is the strategic impact? You can see it. If you gave me 1 trillion cedis or dollars to spend, I must sit down, even as a soldier, and then determine what are the things that I could do with $1 trillion, but in such a way that they will connect with one another. That after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and so on, you see that this country has moved forward. No Ghanaian who is objective can tell us that all the money that we spend, the so-called debt that we have, run ourselves into for the future generation, and not even my children, but my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and yours also, will come to live in a Ghana where our roads infrastructure are good. Look, some time ago I heard somebody talk about Domiko-Abenya. Drive to Domiko-Abenya now and see the roads. Every road that politicians pride themselves on or about, a lot of that money has gone into corrupt pockets. The roads don't last as long as they should last. So we keep spending money, But we are spending the money in order that, our roads will just be about, usable. The majority of the roads are not even, asphalted or tarmac or whatever it is.
In all these, Keno, I've heard people say that leaders are a reflection of the people they lead. And so, we've had situations where one leader will come and say, okay, we are going to make Accra clean again. And the people around him, the citizens will fight these developments. Initiatives come that are supposed to help us have a more orderly city, our roads, driving will be safer for everyone, and you find that the people are resisting all these things. So just to wrap up on this with what we are also supposed to do, again, it is said that we are very passive citizens. We go to vote and then we go to bed expecting our leaders to come do magic. Is that a thing that happens? Don't we have a role to play? Do we not have responsibilities in, one, holding our leaders accountable, and then two, also actively playing a collaborative role with the leadership we get, so that even if you have bad leaders with good laws and active, vigilant, watchful citizens, you can have nothing else but good results?
That is the case. That all of us have a responsibility to ensure that our democracy functions and delivers. But as I suggested earlier, even if 30 million Ghanaians are not taken to the streets, it doesn't mean that they are daft, that they don't know what is going on. Even if they are not being, violent or riotous or whatever it is. It doesn't mean that. Elsewhere, I was given two options for the youth to be called upon to take to the streets as in Kenya. Now I chose the other option, that the onus is on the leadership of this country to sit up and govern this country in a way that they will uphold spirit and letter of the Constitution. That is a better option, rather than to expect that we're going to do everything wrong until the people took to the streets. Today, I'm told in Kenya, the so-called honorables, with all the flashing lights and flags on their vehicles, all of those things have disappeared because they are scared that if they dare drive around the city of Nairobi, or for that matter, any other city in Kenya, they will be targeted. Now, do we need to come to the brink before we wake up? The woman who said she was going to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa, to start with, she must not have done that, said that. And if she said that, if I were in her shoes, I would have had a plan of segmenting Accra and then cleaning up, those kinds of segments in sequence, so that by the end of a certain period, you find Accra, clean. Or I'll take, if you like, thematically, say gutters, say drains, say markets, for instance, say toilets. She came and made this, flamboyant speech. She now has millions of currencies sitting in her house. And people that we expect should know better. I'm not going to mention names. People that we expect should know better, including from the president down, are saying that none of us can prove that the woman stole the money, and therefore she's entitled to keep the money. How can any minister who earns 25,000 Ghana cedis a month end up with those monies in her house?
Right, Colonel.
How then?
Colonel, thank you. We'll leave it here and talk some other time. But it's always refreshing talking to you. Colonel Festus Aboagye, you heard him on the line reflecting on the lecture that was delivered yesterday, talking about corruption, democracy, whether all of this is delivering. We're talking about the fact that a lot more young people should be encouraged to get into agriculture. But are the youth even interested in going there? How can we reduce corruption and create an equitable society for everyone to thrive?